streaming live. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Andy. So I would like to open our meeting with the acknowledgement of traditional territories. The Greater Victoria School District wishes to recognize and acknowledge the Esquimalt and Songhees nations on whose traditional territories we live, we learn, and we do our work. Can I please get a mover to approve the agenda for this evening? Trustee David, all those in favor? Thank you very much, trustees. Just a reminder that all the voting is just for the trustees this evening. And taking us into A3, approval of the minutes, the recommended motion is that the October 16th, 2023 Education Policy and Directions Committee meeting minutes be approved. Can I please get a mover? I see Trustee Bayo. And any changes to those before we call it to a vote? Hearing none, all those in favor? And that is unanimous as well. Thank you. It looks like we don't have any presentations to the committee on the agenda this evening, so we will jump straight into new business, and I will pass it over to Associate Superintendent Arts.
Thank you, Chair. This evening, we have a presentation focusing on middle school and French immersion. And with us this evening, we have District Principal Sean Powell, as well as Principal from Central Middle School, Jill Braun. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Powell to begin and share their presentation.
Thanks, Tom. Good evening, everyone. I'd also like to add to the presentation that Rosie Geyer, who's our French coordinator for the district, is also going to be co-presenting with us. You can see them in the back of the room, and we're just going to take turns being at the front of the conversation for this meeting. I would also like to just, the reason why we're combining these two is, as like Tom said, is a showcase for French immersion, which I could talk about for a long, long time. But we're also combining that with Central Middle School and celebrating the great things that are happening at Central Middle School and some of those that overlap with us in the French immersion and what we're working on. So really starting to look at that. And just the first couple of slides, Andy, are you? Perfect.
You're sharing the slides now, Sean. Thank you.
Gotcha. Is that, and that's the second slide, is it, Andy?
Sorry, back to the first slide here now. And let me just go to presentation view and I'll hand it back to you.
Thanks so much, Andy. If we could just move to the second slide, that would be wonderful. Just, can you put your hands up if you see a gray box in the middle of the screen? Oh, there we go. Okay, I'm not alone. Perfect. Just a few reminders in the first screens. This one is what I work with other district principals. It's a reminder that we have in all of the work we do, and certainly in the work that I get to work with Rosie on in French immersion, is reminding ourselves that the students can say, I belong, I have purpose, and I have matter in every single thing we do. And I think you'll hear that today and when Jill gets to speak about Central and the work they do there as well. Next slide, Andy. And this, I think, for most of the people in this meeting, you've seen this slide before. It's a reminder of the direction of our province, and I won't get into every single different color because you have that in front of you. But again, it's that reminder for the province, is the grounding that we're always looking at educated citizens, but more importantly than that, we have the students front of mind, whether we're speaking of French immersion, whether we're speaking at other initiatives that are happening in our middle schools. That is what is front of mind, is center of mind, is the student success. Thank you, Andy. And strategic plan and our work. This is our anchoring anytime. Jill's going to speak about her school goals at Central in a moment. And this is where we connect our school goals to, is we know we have a strategic plan for our entire district as we try to move all of our schools, not just the dual track ones. We connect those school goals to what are our larger goals in the district. And this is the reminder of that work. And then the ESLER document is how did we do? What are our strategies and are they working? And if they're not working, what strategies do we have to put in place to achieve those goals? So I wanted to loop those all in so that we have that context, so we know why we're doing the things that we're doing, and are they making a difference, and how do we know that? Andy? I'm going to turn it over. So I'm going to slide out of the wheelie chair, and I'm going to ask Jill Braun just to slide for us as she's going to celebrate all things Central.
Good evening, everybody. Lovely to meet you all. Nice to see some friendly faces as well. I'm Jill Braun. I'm the proud principal of Central Middle School, and I'm really glad to be sitting in this room with Rosie as an advocate for French immersion. She was a very welcoming staff member to me, as Central is my first principalship, and I hadn't been in middle school for a long time. So I'm really glad to be here with friendly people behind me. This is just a wonderful picture of Central. We are located in downtown Victoria, and it's a beautiful building that was renovated, and it's a great place for kids to come together and learn. Next slide, please. Just as a reminder about Central, we've been in existence as a school facility since 1853. And this year, as part of our plan moving forward, we've actually brought back our old school logo. We're trying to make sure that we're refreshing ourselves, but also remembering our history. So that's the old Central Middle School logo from the 1950s. Go ahead, Andy. So in consideration of where we are, it's our staff, our students, our community. We're always thinking about our connection to the Lekwungen people who inhabited the lands around Central. So we have quite a big catchment area. And we know that the Indigenous people that lived for thousands of years in our area were in villages along Dallas Road, and we're very much connected to the ocean for a food source and cultural connections. There are actually streams and rivers that came through exactly where our school is located. And we constantly are reminding students of their place, even though we're such an urban center, as I said, in downtown Victoria, always keeping them grounded to the place that they come to every day. Next, please. As I said, we were a school site from 1853 till where we are today, and it's really evolved over time to becoming a high school like Vic High. And then once Vic High moved, it actually was a college for a period of time. So a lot of people have been at the Central Middle School location learning for many, many years. And I find myself every time I'm talking about, oh yeah, I'm at Central, so many people in the community talk about their parents or grandparents having also been at that school, and they're very proud of Central. I'm really proud to be there as a keeper of the place right now. Go ahead. So just to give you some context about Central, we are a school of about 500 students and 312 in English, about 190 in French immersion. We welcome students with many diverse abilities. And so because of that, we're very much a community of diverse learners. And my staff is so incredibly amazing around their understanding of how to work with diverse learners. We welcome our community into the building to support, and we're very lucky to have the district team also support us along the way when we're looking for guidance around those learners. We have 47 Indigenous students. And they're from all over Canada, and it's just so wonderful to welcome them and hear more about where they're from, their backgrounds, and that's being shared all the time in classrooms. Who you are, what's your identity, what brings you to Central. I know that last time you were together, you talked about the Welcome Center and heard presentations from Jen Barber, who was a longtime ELL teacher at our school. We have 49 ELL students and a variety of different students from different countries. And I was surprised to find even Madagascar as being the background of one of our students. And again, we hear these languages in our hallways. We see the diversity in our hallways every day. And that's what really brings a lot of strength and just generosity amongst our students at Central. Next, please. We have about 55 staff members. I'm really lucky to have Dave Shortreed as my vice principal. He brings a lot of energy and experience to our school that we are always looking for different expertise, and Dave brings a lot to our school every day. As you can see, lots of teachers, education assistants, youth and family counselor, we all work together to focus in on our students and keep them at the center of our work. And that's what I've noticed, starting with Rosie back 5 years ago, and the staff members today really do keep students at the center around what do they need as individuals, what do we need as classes, what do we need as a community, and it's a lovely place to be every day. Next, please. And you can just move forward, Andy. And one more. Thank you. So because of that diversity, we feel that our school goal is really something that we can anchor to, that students feel safe, seen, and supported. And this goal was developed collaboratively amongst all of our staff members. And we revisit constantly, and it's a school goal that we can really bring to our students all the time, whether it be in large school assemblies, when we gather together in grade groups, or even when I go into classrooms. It gives us that common language, and it's a focus for our students and families and staff to move forward together. We've been looking at our qualitative and quantitative data to check and see how we're doing. And we're evolving from these sort of broad statements of safety, of being seen, of being supported, to what does that look like every day on the ground at school. Next, please. We've been surveying our students, and when it comes to them feeling safe at school, they appreciate the following things: being welcoming, that they can be themselves. And that goes back to our diversity, that we have lots of positive activities. It's a caring environment with trusted adults. We try to be responsive to concerns, student concerns, as well as family concerns. We try to build community every day. And again, that community is within classrooms, within teams, and also within this whole school community. And when we're dealing with situations between students or within a classroom, we try to really anchor to restorative practice, where we're looking at students reflecting on on how they're feeling, how they're impacting others at school, and how do we move forward together. And definitely thinking that every day is a fresh day. You know, if you've ever been into a middle school, you'll know that adolescents are always on waves. No matter what's happening. And at Central, we definitely are encouraging kids that, you know what, you can make a mistake, and then we'll learn from those mistakes. And we have to do that because of the age and stage that those kids are in. And it's the same for us as adults. I know every day I'm making mistakes, and that I want the students to understand that we're all human and that we move forward together. And that while we're doing this, we're keeping everybody safe at school. Next, please. When we're thinking about how we're seen at school, you know, when I arrived at Central 5 years ago, I was astonished at the amount of programs and activities and things that can be kids can be involved with. So we really give voice and choice to kids. I'll just let you know, full disclosure, we have Super Smash Brothers on Fridays. So that's because we had a student come forward and say, I really want to do this. And alongside Mr. Shortreed and other staff, we've created this, and it's amazing how popular it is. So that's just a little example of really responding to what kids want to bring forward. Central is very unique in that we have something called enrichment. The way I describe it to parents is basically think about a community center guide where you flip through the community center and see all the amazing offerings at that community center. We do that at Central for 2 blocks a week, where everybody in the school picks something that they're passionate about, and staff offer something that they're passionate about. So we have things like knitting and crochet, skateboarding, robotics, just a whole range of activities for kids to be involved with. And it's a place where maybe they're not feeling so seen in one way, but they love Dungeons and Dragons, and they can be seen as the, I guess it's called the Dragon Master. I don't know what it's called, but the head of the Dungeons and Dragons, or that enrichment. We have Students of Color Association, GSA. Oh, thank you, Dungeon Master. Appreciate that. Help me out there. All sorts of programs, musical theater that's student run and student led. A great story. A student from Esquimalt came back to visit and said they were like really upset that they don't get to direct the school musical. At Central, kids direct it. So it's amazing to see them learn and grow through that. We have student led announcements and assemblies and leadership. So again, we're trying to offer as much as possible so that kids can feel seen at school. We want to, lots of times adolescents want to be kind of anonymous, but they also want to be seen. And so we love the fact that we give them all these opportunities. Next, please. And finally, going along with our school, what does it mean to feel supported? And that's really part of the adults' roles. How do we create the conditions that students can be at their best? You can imagine with the diversity that we have at Central, we need lots of ways to make sure that students can walk into our building and feel like they're ready to learn. We have a breakfast program, a huge lunch program. We are so lucky to be supported by the Harborside Rotary, who also create food backpacks for those families that are struggling with food security. We try to make sure that all students are aware of and can access social emotional support through their advisory teacher, through our inclusive learning team, through counseling, because we know, as I said, getting back to those waves, we want to make sure that there's adults there to ride along the waves with them and make sure that they've got what they need to feel like they're ready for learning. Lots of systems in place in middle school, not just at Central, but all over the district around identifying the needs of our learners, making sure that our advisory teacher is able to be that first person that they see every day to help them with those needs. Amazing education assistants. I really can't speak more highly about the EAs that we have at Central. And I know they're great everywhere, but Central, we're number one. Just amazing EAs that help our students every day, and alongside our inclusive learning teachers, help to identify those needs and support them. And the most important thing at middle school I see is creating voice for those students, that they can be part of this community, that it's not that the adults aren't always creating everything, that kids are coming alongside us to create what they need through clubs, leadership, and so on. And so those support pieces are so important during these adolescent years as these students are moving from childhood into adolescence. And we feel at Central that we're on a really great journey to provide those supports for students. Next, please. You got to have the visuals because this is why we're doing the work, right? It's because of the kids. So just a few pictures that we've been working on, since September. We had a whole school walk on Orange Shirt Day, just around reconciliation, moving to a place of kids being part of the action piece. There's some wonderful grade 6s that were part of our cross country team. They come in from grade 5. It's pretty nerve-wracking to make that transition to middle school, but these kids stepped up to represent their middle school within the first 3 weeks. So wonderful to see them, those smiling faces after what I think was a pretty long run that day. Next, please. I just wanted to show some ways that we're really trying to honor our students. Up in the left corner there is our Indigenous grad that we host for our grade 8s. They were a little shy that day. We had quite a few more students, but they didn't want to be part of the picture. But we really want them to know that we honor and really celebrate the accomplishment of them being part of our middle school as they move on to high school. We try to have music at every student assembly. Our music program is rich and diverse, and we are so appreciative of all the work that they do. And let's brag a little. We have the best office staff. We try to bring joy to our work every day, and that's just a picture of them there. So it's a wonderful place to be. Next, please. I can't speak. Our French program is outstanding. French oral language has been a focus of our French program for many years. And I know, as I said, I introduced Rosie as being a colleague, really helped me understand what it's like to focus on French oral language in all of the grade levels. So Central's had this history of working collaboratively, and many of our Central staff members in French have become leaders to the district. We have a French ILST and French speaking EA to support our French. This is critical, especially around our French oral language. The more adults we have to be alongside our students, that's how we get them to feel more safe, more seen and supported. We scaffold the time through the students' work in French immersion at Central. So it starts in grade 6. That's a huge transition from grade 5 to grade 6. We want to make sure that they're feeling that this is as one that we can bridge alongside them. So in grade 6, students are really starting to be encouraged to speak French more, not just within their classrooms, but outside their classrooms through projects, through that work. In grade 7, we're really starting to see more showcases. So students are showcasing their French by talking to other students within our school, talking to community members as they come in. And then the highlight is that in grade 8, they do a program through APPA that I will talk about as we go along here. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in grade 6 and 7, as I mentioned, we start to begin the focus on French oral language through listening to music and being able to sing along with French songs. I'll find myself walking into classes all the time and hearing students doing skits, singing, reframing questions, watching French language movies. And so being really mindful, the teachers are really mindful of making oral language part of the focus as they're in these grade 6, 7 classes. My French ILST, who's amazing, Lindsay Harriet, was talking about language objectives. And that's when kids pick an oral skill that they want to develop each day. And alongside the teacher, they can show how they're practicing it and becoming better at it as they go along. So it's kids' choice. It's not being done to them. They're walking alongside their teacher. Project-based learning and science fairs and doing things where we can bring in other grades to see what they're working on is super important, because that shows their pride and their strength with their language. And they're feeling safe because they've got their peers alongside them as well. I really want to talk about French Cafe that Rosie, were you there for the French Cafe? Yeah, Rosie. I actually can taste the croissants that some of the students brought in, but they actually developed the grade 7 students alongside Lindsay and their teachers had a day-long project of a French cafe where other French students within the school were coming along and being served as if we were having an afternoon in Paris. And so it was all in French and really showing the culture and community of the students together. It was pretty awesome. Next, please. I think I had some pictures, but I'm not sure where they went. But that's okay. We'll move on to the French Immersion 8. So as the students are building their French oral language through grade 6 and 7, they're getting ready for an immersive language program called Applied Learning that happens in grade 8. This started in 2014 because many of our French 8 teachers were doing really extensive projects. And so they kind of wove it into their schedule so that 3 afternoons a week, all the French Immersion 8 students get to choose a passion that they would like to work on. And they get 3 opportunities through the year, which involves community connection, working together on a project, and then a final project that is that we as the central community can participate in or witness. And so the whole thing is done in French, and there's a lot of interactive pieces to it, which is really what oral language is all about. Next, please. For example, we had an amazing teacher, Roger Duval, who retires and returns, and has been the driving force around Cirque du Central. And so we have students that by the end of their time together are able to perform a full circus for the school. And it's been an amazing community project that has been going on for many years. Alan Barwin has a real affinity towards the social justice piece and learning about and considering the solutions to issues in the community. For instance, today his APPA went to City Hall and had an audience with the Mayor of Victoria to talk about social issues within our central community. Alison Balaba last year had an epopee around weaving around the world, and they had a display up at UVic. Again, it's this idea of we're working on these skills, we're doing it in French, and then we're presenting it to our community. Other ones that from last year, we had Fashion for Future, where the students who chose that apprentissage appliqué actually ended up having a fashion show at Central where they used recycled fashion to demonstrate what we need to do as a society because of the throwaway fashions that we're experiencing today. Brooke took some students who wanted to learn about how to be a rock band. He's a professional musician himself, and they created their own rock band and actually performed for all of our feeder schools in French. We've gone to watch Shakespeare performances in French at Langham Court. A lot of storytelling, writing, and publishing. In fact, there's a book that is still being published today that was started 10 years ago in a project through our French 8 community. So many more to talk about. I don't know if we're going to see the pictures. Andy, can we see? Do we have the pictures? Thought we did a slide of pictures. Oh, they're gone. Darn. Well, you know what? Everyone on the screen today will have to come to Central and watch those community performances to get a real sense of what it looks like. But Central French Immersion is outstanding. It is definitely focused in on the students feeling safe, seen, and supported within their French immersion, because we really want to make sure that they continue on all the way through till graduation. Thank you so much for your time today. Everyone has a free pass to come to Central anytime, but you'll definitely have to keep your eyes and ears up because it's a busy place. But thank you very much for your time today. Do I stay here?
I'm going to slide back in.
Okay.
Thanks, Jill. I hope everybody can hear in her voice how proud she is of her school, the staff, and the students that she gets to work with every day. And I know as a former school-based principal, it's really difficult to only have a slot of time when you want to celebrate all the great things in your school. These students are from SJD, Sir James Douglas, and they'll be Central Middle School students before we blink our eyes. Can you go to the next screen, please, Andy? Just a quick overview. I think everybody can read the screen themselves. Just over 19% of our students are in the French immersion stream. They have entry points of K1 and 6. I'm going to talk about our 2 school goals in a sec. And Rosie is the 0.7 district language coordinator. And she's going to be speaking to you in a moment. And really proud that we have applied for additional funding and grants so that we can do deeper, more meaningful work that I'm going to talk even more about. Jill touched on it, but I'm going to talk about it even a little bit more that we applied for and received this past year. So 159,000 that came into languages and supporting students. Next screen, please, Andy. Goals. Like you have at a school or even with a strat plan, we spoke about our goals in our strategic plan. I also have that, Rosie and I work with that within our French language as well. We really need to have those 2 anchors to hold on to when we're doing our work, when we're making decisions, when we're dealing with resources and funding and all the rest of it. We need to come back to how is that supporting one of the 2 goals that we have. So first one is our oral language goal. And I'm going to get into why it connects to Central and that work in a moment. But supporting the continued development work of students' oral comprehension, production, and interaction skills through teacher action research. That's the most important point we're going to talk about in a second. Professional development sessions and digital and print resources. And the second one is, they both say number 1. I guess that's what it means to us. That they support the development and positive linguistic identity for French language teachers and students. What that's speaking to is when our kids are graduating in grade 12 from the French immersion program, are they connected as a French speaker? Do they believe that that is part of their identity? And that is our goal and should be our goal right from kindergarten all the way to the end of their schooling. And right now, and Rosie's going to speak about this in a moment, we're really looking to see where our students are leaving French immersion and perhaps why. Next screen, please. Key initiatives around the first goal, the oral language goal. I just got back yesterday from a national French immersion conference, and I took a lot of pride, and I want to share that with everyone because I think you will too from our district. And there was a conference center of about 1,000 French immersion teachers, and there was 2 profs, Dr. René Bourgoin and Dr. René Boutelier, are two profs that we've been working with for almost 2 years now. And they started co-creating an oral language pilot at Central. So it was happening at Central Middle School as the host. It included teachers from SJD and also some from Victoria High School. And so as a group in that family of schools, they were really looking at what is oral language, what do we need to be doing with oral language, and how does it become something intentional? Usually as teachers, we focus on, well, we have math next and we have science, or that's been historically, we focus on those, but intentionally do we say, we need to be working on oral language today, and where are students at? And what strategies do we need to put in place so that we're improving their oral language as they continue? And that's something that we need to continue way beyond their primary years up until high school. We're focusing on our oral language. It's intentional. So I was really proud. I was sitting in this conference room with 1,000 educators from across our country, and they was essentially sharing about our oral project that they did in our school district with our students and our teachers. And I was at a table, and I was having a hard time going, oh, that's us, that's our school district. I didn't do that, but I had a lot of pride sitting there. Another thing that we're doing to try to improve oral language within our district is our new career learning rounds. And this year we have 17 teachers that are involved in those learning rounds. And those are two teachers that are new to being French immersion teachers, and they're working with facilitators to go to different schools to co-plan lessons so that they're continuously improving their practice. And not only that, or perhaps just as importantly, they're creating a community within our community. They're growing up in their career together, so they have one another to lean on as their career continues as French immersion teachers. So really, really important. And then just briefly, I'm conscious of time, our Congrès, we have a conference, like a mini SD61 conference that we're holding on November 20th. And that's open to all of our French immersions to join us. I think now it's approximately 60 to 70. 75 is the new number coming in that we get together. It's our second annual. So last year we had the same conference, and also a shout out, a big thank you to Arbutus Global Middle School for the staff that have been helping us out there, but also for just hosting within their building. It's much appreciated. Last year, I have to tell you, it was super powerful to be in a room speaking French with French teachers to take back to French classrooms. There's a certain power to that, and I'm not sure how to explain that better than that. But it was a wonderful conference, and the feedback that I had last year was great. So again, thank you to Arbutus for doing that. I'm going to be passing over to Rosie. She's going to come forward and talk about our initiatives for the second goal. Next slide, Andy.
All right, thank you. Hi, everyone. So I'm just going to touch briefly on a few things on this slide. Our second goal is identity and inclusion workshops with Dr. Monica Tang. We're bringing in Dr. Monica Tang. She works out of SFU, and for a series of workshops for teachers this year. The first one's coming up this Wednesday. And teachers have signed up. I think we've got about 25 to 30 teachers to learn and grow together around issues like, what's the balance of English in a French immersion class? How are we creating authentic opportunities for students to interact in French in their school communities and in their classrooms? And how do we really foster a sense of belonging for students in those classrooms, and just grow together and feel included, both as educators, and we know that when we focus on that, our students will benefit as well. Another way that we are really working on that identity piece is through cultural events. So last year we worked with the Société Francophone de Victoria, and we brought in some dance workshops, authentic French Canadian dance workshops into elementary and middle schools, and they were a blast. I actually got to participate as a classroom teacher last year, and it was just a highlight and so fun to watch middle school students get up and present square dancing to live accordion music to their peers. It was really fun. We also hosted a really big concert for secondary students last year with the Flo Franco, and we're working on another concert series for this year as well. Another way that we are supporting linguistic identity is creating community for teachers that really boosts that sense of community for students. And two particular examples of this is For groups of teachers that work in kind of smaller programs like late FRIM and our secondary program, which is smaller as well, we have collaborative working groups for those teachers. And those teachers have the opportunity to come together a few times a year and collaborate on issues that are really unique to them in their roles. And out of that come nice things for students too. Like last year, for example, our late FRIM team planned, I think it was at least 2 sort of whole program outings for the students. So late FRIM students got to come together from different schools and do activities together in community. And finally, a retention study. So Sean referred to some of that grant funding that was applied for and received. And one of those grants was to work on student retention in our FRIM programs. So I'm really enjoying that as part of my role this year. I'm currently analyzing lots and lots of numbers. And going out of that, I look forward to moving out of the early phase and getting into schools and connecting with staff members and hopefully students as well, and having conversations about what is the part of our FRIM program that's working really well, and what can we do to improve the program for all learners and work on retention numbers together. Thanks.
Thank you, Rosie. Just quickly, French Advisory Committee is a group of, we have Trustee Bayot as well. She's here. I can't see her right now on the screen, but she is has been a part of this committee. And it's a committee where we get together a few times a year to share the work that we're doing with French language, to question things, to see if there's any other strategies we'd like to try, and for me to get feedback from all of the groups that you see on the deck right now. So really important committee to me for sure. I just wanted to share it because they also volunteer their time, all the people that are currently a part of this, to come out, and the intention is solely on making French immersion even stronger in our district, and also with the child at the center. Next slide, please. And that's just a quick thank you, but I would also like to thank just my co-presenters, Jill Braun, Rosie Geyer, for being here tonight and celebrating the work that is happening in French immersion, the work that was happening with the oral French program, and thank you to those teachers as well that started that work and went on a thin branch to do some really strong initiatives that are being shared across the country. And at this time, Chair, I'll take any questions at all for any of the 3 of us right now. I'm not sure if we have time for that, but.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jill and Rosie and Sean, for presenting. What fantastic presentations. It was so wonderful to hear about the goings on at Central Middle School, as well as what's happening in the French immersion program right now. Does anybody have any? Oh, yeah, Trustee Painter, go for it.
Thanks very much. And, you know, having seen my kids thrive at Central over the years, now in the rearview mirror, I can attest to what a fantastic community and program is supported. I was really interested to see that there was a French immersion EA. That is an excellent one. I know that that's been a plea from parents and likely teachers as well for quite some time. I was just wondering how many EAs with French immersion, you know, who are comfortable in a French immersion environment do we have in the district?
It's a really, would you like me to take that, Chair? Yep, jump in. Okay. Yeah, Trustee Painter, I'm not sure the exact numbers we have. I think it would be a hard one to track simply because we have EAs that are French speaking from other experiences in their life, and they bring those to their schools. And yes, it's an absolute blessing when that happens. It's also a blessing when you have a French speaking LST or a trained learning support teacher who's also bilingual, because it's really important. And you'll see in some of the videos on our website about French immersion, we really are trying to shine a light on the diversity with that program, that it is built for all of our students, no matter what their needs are in school, and that we need to be able to support those students if they choose to come into French for the passion of learning another language. So great question. I don't have the exact numbers, but I do know that it would be a hard one to measure just simply because they're not always qualifications on paper, but rather a background in speaking French.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean. I see Nissa Tamel's hand. Go ahead.
Yay, Nissa, I didn't see you before.
Merci beaucoup. Premièrement, je veux dire que ça me plaît beaucoup de voir tout ce qui se passe en français en école. Thank you very much. I'm so pleased to see everything that happens in French. I myself was a French immersion student, and my 2 children are in French immersion, so I can attest to the importance of this program in our schools. The question I am bringing forward from the VC PAC tonight. First, I was really excited to see the report from Central. I really appreciated hearing a bit more about the history of the school. It was something that I wasn't aware of, and all the great work that you're doing. The question I had was also around educational assistance and the ratios in the school. And we're wondering if, given that there were 7 EAs and 1 youth family counselor, I think on one of the slides I saw, and then there were about 18% of students with IEPs, so that's 91 by your numbers. And then I'm not going to go through the other numbers I saw, but I was wondering if is that thought to be enough, given that there are students who don't have those learning prescriptions in place. So if that's seen as being sufficient in the school, if you're looking at tracking and reporting.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure.
Okay. Thanks so much for your question. Yeah, it's a complex school, but we're very fortunate to have been given some extra FTE. So we brought in another inclusive learning teacher to help support the needs within our school. You know, it's also about making sure that our teachers are able to support students by using universal design for learning, being able to be more mindful of the needs of those students. So it's a whole systems piece that you know we have to focus in on as well. Could we use more EAs? Yes. I don't know that there's a principal out there that wouldn't say we could use more hands on deck. And you know, some days, yeah, it really feels difficult to run a school, but many days it feels like we're just humming along, right? We also have a school counselor. We made sure that that school counselor is full-time. So we have 2 full-time counselors and then an Indigenous counselor for our students as well, who we share with Lansdowne and Vic High. But yeah, it doesn't make for easy days. I'm not, you know, there's no 2 ways about it. But we do our best with what we're given, and we continue to advocate for more. But I also know that there's elementary schools that require support as well. So we work as a family of schools, a family of the Greater Victoria School District, and I'm just part of that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, I appreciate the kind words about Central. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for that answer, Jill. Go ahead, Trustee Duncan.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to present to us this evening. Certainly a shortage of EAs that we see across our district. It means that everybody struggles, and I applaud your approach to it because what else can we do but continue to do our best to try to address some of those retention issues and some of the recruitment issues. And I know that HR is working really hard to look at unique and creative ways to do that. But thank you for everything that you all do in order to, you know, continue to do good work despite the fact that we are often short of EA support. I wanted to say thank you for, you know, just, I love the goals, right? Like the safe, seen, supported, right? Foundations, right? For all learners, whether they're, you know, FRIM learners or English track learners or ELL learners. It's just, you know, at the end of the day, every person needs to be seen and feel supported and safe. I really would be interested to hear a little bit more, if you don't mind, subject to time, Chair, about some of the ways that you intentionally create those conditions that you spoke so eloquently about to help students feel heard, but also just around meeting students' needs. I often hear, how complex it is to identify what students need, and then to provide those attentional opportunities to both give them voice about how maybe you could address their needs, but also about, what those needs are in the first place. So I know you spoke to something as foundational as like some of the breakfast programs and lunch programs, but I'm wondering if you can kind of give us some examples of what you do to create that space, that intentional space for students.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I kind of look at it as a school leader around kind of like Maslow's hierarchy, right? What do students need before we can even get to the learning, right? And we know that students are coming from a variety of different homes, family situations, internalized situations, and so on. I mean, the complexity coming into the building in all of our buildings is one that we might not even be able to imagine as they step in, right? And so what we try to do is every time we're together as a staff, our admin team really tries to honor the fact that our staff do a really good job of identifying daily what a student needs, over time, and over 3 years when they're with us for 3 years. And we've gone out, it's not just Jill Braun here, it's like the lineup of people that have worked at Central. I just am the lucky one that gets to talk about it. But there's been a real culture around, first of all, Harborside Rotary being in our building. I think they've done our breakfast program for close to 15 years. And I go every year to thank them on behalf of our school. But they're there every day. We have an army of staff that collect the bread from Cobb's at Harris Green down by London Drugs. So that's how we are able to bring that in. I've moved some of my staffing, so I have school meal assistant. That's just what we need to do so that we can serve 65 students for lunch every day. And just looking at our budget and making sure that we're being mindful on how we're allocating those funds so that we can just get to that base layer of, can kids learn every day? No child goes without food, doesn't matter who you are, we have snacks all over the building, etc. So we just start there. When it comes to now looking at the social and emotional needs of our students, we have something called student services. All of our middle schools do this, where once every 2 weeks, a member of our school-based team, so it could be an ILST, a counselor, administrator, usually all three, join with a team of teachers to discuss the needs of their kids. And that's where we kind of do, like, I guess that's the emergency room. That's where we flag kids' needs. Then we bring those needs to our school-based team, which meets every 2 weeks. And we discuss them as a professional learning community of school-based teams. So that's like, again, inclusive learning, ELL, Indigenous Ed, administration, because we all bring a little bit to that table. I'm not an inclusive learning teacher or a counselor, but I may have information about that student that we can share in confidence. So now we come up with a plan. What's our plan going to be? So the way we run all of those meetings is we have the student at the center, the story about what might be happening for them, but there has to be an action plan. And then who is responsible for that? So we always roll back to make sure we're talking about what happened to those students we talked before. We want to create that net so we can hold on to them. As well as a whole school, the slide that, I don't know, the one near the top, the slide where we talk about who our learners are. We are 502 students, we're this many English, or this many French. I bring that to every staff meeting because I want our staff to be really clear on who we are as a school. And the data doesn't lie. This is how many nationalities we represent. We have students that have come directly from the Ukraine. We have students from Russia in our building. We have students that are from all over the world that are in conflict back in their home countries. But we as a central community are making sure that everyone is safe, seen, and supported. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's a simple mantra that we can use to guide us all the way along in our professional learning when we have Pro D days, all of it. So I hope that sort of answers your question. Maybe it doesn't get to the details that you'd like, but those are some of the systems we have in place. I don't know what it's like at all schools, but that's what we do at Central.
Thank you so much. That was
Okay.
really insightful. And that's exactly what I was like hoping to get, was a sense of how you implement it. Yeah, super interesting, super important work you do. So thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for your questions and also for your answers. If there are no further questions, I'd like to move us along to the next item in our agenda. And I don't see any hands, so I'm assuming that's okay with everyone. So the next item is our draft regulation 4X, international student enrollment. And I'm going to open up the floor for some discussion around the changes that you will find at page 41 of the agenda package. I will let Trustee Duncan take it away. Go for it.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was hoping that we could have a bit of a discussion here tonight about some of the potential amendments and additions. I guess first and foremost, I wanted to just look at if we could. So right now it's section 3 at 3.3. It reads right now, if they have adequate medical insurance or pay for coverage through a private insurer managed by the International Student Program staff. And I just wanted to get a little clarity about, the extent to which we require certain medical coverage. And I just wanted to sort of unpack whether we are, whether ISP is having to go through some kind of a evaluation process to determine whether other coverage is suitable or meets our sort of standard, or whether we require students to purchase particular medical coverage.
I'm wondering, go for it, Jeff. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I can jump in there and clarify. Publicly posted on our website, it indicates that the fee for medical insurance for both long-term and short-term programs. So that is something that we would expect all international students to have and purchase through the program.
Awesome. Trustee Duncan, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, so I'm wondering if we could just sort of provide some clarification then, just in terms of the wording. Right now, I was unclear when I read it. Right now, it says if they have adequate medical insurance or pay for the coverage through a private insurer managed by the International Student Program. For me, when I read that, I thought there might be an option to purchase other medical insurance besides the one that we offer through the program. So perhaps we could just sort of clarify that, unless it's just me, maybe I'm just confused by it. So just a suggestion.
Yeah, if I may, it does sound like it's almost the same thing, having coverage and having adequate paying for it privately. It's still having coverage. I don't know if that matters as well. I'm not sure if anyone can answer that specific kind of train of thought that I'm having. But moving forward, go ahead, Nissa.
Is this a requirement? Because I know for like in some cases when you're traveling internationally, you need, like, in order not to be a burden on the public health system for the country that you're visiting, you're required to have health insurance as part of a visa or something like that. So I don't know if that's the case here, but if it is, I think that the documentation should make reference to that. So it's really, really clear for folks that there's an alignment across, like, for insurance needs for health coverage, if that is the case.
Yeah, Jeff, I don't know if are you able to?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can jump in again and just reinforce the statement that all international students purchase insurance when they apply for the program, when they are provided an invoice and apply for the program. And it, it's all on the website. The fees are there. So I think that I'm not obviously not going to jump in and make suggestions on how to change it, but that's the practice.
Go ahead, Nicole. Sorry, Trustee Duncan.
No worries. Yeah, so maybe perhaps we could just sort of say then that international students will be required to pay for coverage through a private insurer managed by the International Student Program.
I agree. That provides clarity.
And so, Chair, did we want to work through? Oh, sorry. I think.
Sorry, I'm just seeing Superintendent Witten's hand, and go ahead, Superintendent.
Thank you very much. From the chair, through the chair, just looking at the STEM that starts at 3.0, so that they're accepted following an application process and are prepared to meet the following conditions. So I just want to make sure that the sentences that flow after that 3.1, 3.2, and 3.3 follow that line. So just wanted to go back to the suggested changes and make sure it aligns with that opening STEM if they follow that condition.
Yeah, sorry, Trustee Duncan, did you have like a specific, could you repeat your suggestion?
Yeah, so just going up then to section 3.0. So the amendment would be to 3.3, but if we start at 3.0, right now it reads, subject to applicable Board of Education policies and regulations, international students may be enrolled in the international programs as short-term students at the elementary, middle, and secondary levels for a fee if they are accepted following an application process and are prepared to meet the following conditions. So at 3.1, it says if they pay the appropriate fees for the program offered. 3.2 reads if they live in an approved homestay or with their parents or legal guardian who will maintain adult over 25 years of age supervision throughout the study period. And right now it reads at 3.3, if they have adequate medical insurance or pay for the coverage through a private insurer managed by the International Student Program staff. So I suppose 3.3 then would read end pay. So semicolon end pay for the coverage. Pay for medical coverage through a private insurer managed by the International Program, Student Program staff. So hopefully that will flow adequately. But again, I'm not really worried about the wording as long as it's clear that the requirement is, as Director Davis pointed out, to purchase the medical insurance offered through the program.
I have a question that I'm not sure if it's going to make sense or not, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. Is there a scenario in which an international student might have the adequate medical insurance without purchasing medical insurance managed by the ISP? Like maybe they have an amazing credit card or something with international student insurance on it or something. Is that even a thing that exists, or do we know that this isn't gonna mess anything up for anybody? Go for it. Thanks, Jeff.
I suppose that could be a scenario that would emerge. However, we require the students to purchase the insurance that's listed on the website, and we are aware of all of the coverage and benefits that they have with that insurance.
Awesome. That answers my question perfectly. Thank you. Go ahead, Trustee Painter.
Thank you, Chair. I recognize right off the bat that there was language in here in what was formerly section 1, that talked about students who weren't considered international students. And I'm not entirely sure if the background statement at the top, where they're neither Canadian citizens nor have permanent resident status, are considered international students. And if we're going to, and I don't know if the clarification about subject to policies and regulations and rules established under IRCC, if that quite has the same level of clarity. I'm not suggesting getting into the weeds of identifying all these different criteria, but I'm mindful that we also have a policy on sanctuary schools, which is intended to protect families and students who may be of unsettled residency or immigration status, but are nevertheless considered normally resident in Victoria. And I don't know that this is necessarily the regulation to fix it, but it feels as if there's a gap somewhere in the directions that we're providing. And just wondering if anyone has had any thoughts about that.
Trustee Duncan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And thanks to Trustee Painter for pointing that out. Yeah, my suggestion would be to maybe look back at the policy around this and the definition section in particular, where we draw on the term, like, so we define international student to mean a student from outside Canada who does not meet the Ministry of Education's funding eligibility requirements and or has to obtain authorization from the Canadian government to enter Canada with the intention of pursuing studies. We also, in the policy document, define ordinarily resident, which I think directly, I think speaks to the point you're making, Trustee Painter, and that we highlight in the sanctuary schools policy and reg as well. So I'm wondering maybe if we could weave in both the definition of international student and of ordinarily resident into the regulation, and maybe in that opening statement, just to kind of ground what then follows.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification, Trustee Duncan. I think that's a really good idea. I'm wondering, do you want to move a motion to make changes, or
Yeah. So maybe what I could do. So we've got some amendments in the document. My suggestion would be that if we want to sort of backtrack and go back to the background section that Trustee Painter was referring to, and I think address maybe the first sentence, which starts with students who are neither Canadian citizens nor have permanent resident status are considered international students and may be enrolled in the district international programs. Maybe it's there that we weave in the definition of both international student and then ordinarily resident. So maybe what we say then is maybe what we want to say is that this regulation applies to international students, which means a student from outside Canada, and then just include the definition. Like, just be very specific about that. Wondering what the committee feels about that.
I think that's a really good place to put it. Any thoughts from the rest of the committee? Superintendent?
Thank you very much, through the chair. I'm wondering if it would be possible, given it is a regulation, if we might be able to make sure that we're able to come back and the staff has time to look at this. I feel like it would be beneficial to certainly the international department as well as the senior leadership staff to be able to look at it one more time and make sure that we're lining these up with current operational practices or practices that the board wishes based on the newly passed international policy. Maybe I should just seek clarification on where we're headed this evening, so I know where to add the words or to just make sure that we're capturing what we need to.
Yeah, absolutely. Trustee Duncan, do you want to maybe go over your thoughts one more time? And if we're not moving a motion, maybe staff can have the opportunity to add those changes before we go forward.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm at the committee's disposal. My intention was to move a motion to make some changes to the draft, move the changes that are already in the marked up draft, as well as taking account of some of the suggestions that we're hearing around the committee table, with the overall goal of the revised regulation going to the board. And so maybe what we could consider then is that with some of the changes between now and the board meeting, if there's any sort of additional advice or feedback or wording that is coming from the superintendent or staff, that then the board can consider that at the end of the month, and hopefully that will be enough time for them to have a look through. That would be my suggestion, just so that we're not capturing. So I mean, I think we want to capture the conversation tonight through appropriately moved motions for sure.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great.
So maybe through the chair then, if you don't mind, to the superintendent, does that suit you, Superintendent Whitten? Does that provide enough time and also clarity about what it is where we've landed? If we move some motions and then the revised draft, you could consider and provide some more advice if needed before the end of the month, before the board meeting?
I certainly would endeavor to do that. I guess my wonder is that this is sort of out of practice, that we're looking through our regulation and then bringing it forward to a board motion. So I'm hopeful that as we come through with the wording, then I can take it back and make sure that we're aligning it. So that would be certainly my best effort to get it ready for the November board meeting.
All right. Yeah, go ahead, Trustee Duncan.
Okay, so yeah, so I guess just in terms of process, just to clarify that that we're all good to move amendments to a regulation, and that the board can do that. And then second of all, that it'll then there'll be an opportunity between ed policy and the board if there's any additional sort of advice or recommendations that staff wish to bring for the board's consideration. So if we're good with that, then what I would suggest is that we maybe start at the top and just try to capture Trustee Painter's point. And then just about clarifying like the definition of international student, so who the policy applies to. And then Chair, did you want me to clarify the potential language?
Yeah, I think would you be able to put the language in maybe the chat for when you move the motion so that we know exactly what's being changed?
Yeah, just bear with me a second. I'll see if I can capture it from the.
Take your time.
Thanks.
I know for myself, it's almost impossible for me to come up with it right in the moment. Like I need a second myself. Like, I don't know how you do it.
I do my best. Sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. Well, we have to be prepared for failure, I suppose, in life and just be able to work with it, try to learn from it, right? Okay, so my suggestion would be this. Okay, so. Okay, so basically what this is taking the definition from the policy and then just sort of saying that the following regulation applies to international students who are students from outside of Canada, et cetera, et cetera. So it just draws directly from the definition in the policy.
All right. Any comment from the committee before I call for a mover? Okay, that looks good. Trustee Duncan, would you like to move your motion?
Sure. And just for clarity, that would replace the first sentence in the first paragraph of the reg.
Okay. And before I call it to a vote, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Did you have any other motions that you wanted to move, Trustee Duncan, or anyone else on the committee for that matter? Go ahead, Trustee.
Yeah, so I mean, I think obviously I think we'll need a kind of wrap up motion to wrap up some of the amendments and just to send it on to the next stage of consideration. But before we do that, there was a couple of sections I just wanted to discuss as a committee and hopefully hear from Director Davis about like practice and any kind of like thoughts about these observations. So in section 4, we so at 4.5, there's a sentence that says the Victoria International Education staff will prepare all legal documentation required for this students to study in Canada. And then it says it continues on the next page. It says the VIE staff will ensure adult supervision of each international student during their study program in the district is maintained through the student's parent or homestay arrangements. So in terms of the first part of that, I wondered whether or not, and again, this is really for staff, I think, and for Director Davis, I'm wondering if we can look at that wording just through the lens of wanting to clarify how we do that work. So, and whether we're taking it as a district responsibility, should there be any errors or omissions in terms of those documents. So I'm wondering, I guess, through the chair to Director Davis, if there is any advice that you have about how we could consider rewording that just to remove any potential like risk that we're taking on if there is some kind of error or omission when it comes to that documentation.
Through the chair, yeah, I think I would need a bit of time to really carefully consider that so I can provide the best possible answer. I'm on one screen, so I'm just gonna look at it again and read it once more. Yeah, I think I would need, if possible, a bit more time to consider an answer to that. It is related to letters of acceptance and also related to the roles and responsibility we have as an international program.
Go ahead, Trustee Duncan.
No, and just through the chair to Director Davis, thanks for that. So perhaps there's a couple of other sections. So at 4.6, there's similarly kind of, well, not similarly, there's a paragraph that reads the VIE staff will maintain communications with school personnel and the families abroad. And then right now, there's nothing included in the regulation about the rules that students must follow, the refund policy, and so on. So perhaps maybe what we do at this stage then, in order to kind of progress this, would be to just put a general motion to accept the amendments that we've made so far in the markup. And then what I would ask, and we can do this by motion, I'll defer to the superintendent's sort of direction on this, but perhaps then we get some clarity between now and the board meeting about the wording at 4.5. Again, through the lens of risk and liability. And then in addition, the need to add a section about the rules that students must follow and the refund policy. So maybe I'll start with just a general motion, if I may, Chair, just moving the amendments to the draft regulation.
Absolutely. Any discussion before we call it to a vote? Hearing none, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. Trustee Duncan?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So through you to the superintendent, just seeking some direction on how to move the additional clarity and additional potential paragraphs, like how best to seek that advice between now and the board meeting, whether we want to, if we can just sort of say that we would appreciate some advice from staff, and in particular, the Director of International Student Program, about the addition of paragraphs about, sorry, let me just go back to my notes, about the program rules that students must follow and the refund policy. And then clarity about the wording and potential risk and liability associated with the current wording at 4.5.
Thank you, if I may, through the chair. We can certainly do that without a motion, and I know that as Jeff is on the call this evening, we would be looking at this. I'd also welcome him to provide any other additions he may see are important to put into the regulations. So I think, because we haven't had that opportunity yet, I know that we would all welcome it and can get that done prior to the November board meeting.
Thank you so much to the chair, to the superintendent, much appreciated. Did you want me to drop in the chat my comments, or are we good?
I think we're good. Thank you. I think we've captured them.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Excellent. So we've moved the two motions that were brought forward by Trustee Duncan. Is there any further comment about this document before I move us forward to the next agenda item? It sounds like we are on track to continue. So that brings us to item C3 of the agenda, report on International Student Program, and I'm going to pass it over to the superintendent.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, you'll see beginning on page 47, a report from that stemmed from the October 30th, 2023 board motion. I believe the report is fairly self-explanatory, but I would like to share just a few things for clarification. Table 1, again, it was pretty clear, but just to make sure, it does show the current number of international students in the schools that they're attending as of September 29th, 2023. And then tables 2 through 4 show each school's functional capacity, as well as the Bergar projections for the next 3 years. Then the number of re-enrolling international students, then the average number of transfer requests. And as you move through the columns, you'll see 3-year average for in catchment, and then out of catchment siblings, out of catchment in pathway, and out of catchment non-pathway students, and then out of district. And the final column to the right shows the space remaining. If it is a red and a negative number, that is denoting that there wouldn't be space if those projections were did come to fruition, and also that all of the transfer requests and re-enrolling students came into that school. So we know that is not always the case as students move around the district, but that is what the red number shows. And those were done for the next 3 years. So table 2 is next year, and then the 2 years beyond that. And I think that's pretty clear as far as those tables. Couple caveats with that. The projections are not exact, as we've known over time. These are Beauregard projections, and with immigration and other changes to the neighborhoods, they do change. We also have space capacity that is listed, and space in schools changes every year, if not even within a year, when learning studios are put in place and opened up, or classrooms are changed inside the school. So just want to give a couple of caveats to the information there. It's certainly not exact and right down to the number, but hopefully it does provide the information that was requested through the motion.
Go ahead, Trustee Duncan.
Yeah, so through the chair to the superintendent, thank you very much for pulling this information together. And I appreciate the caveat. We're learning more and more about the impacts of other factors such as immigration, and also just the limits of projections in the Beauregard data, that might not include things about new housing projects and other things in neighborhoods that are happening all around us and that might impact enrollment. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things in the information provided. I wondered if it'd be possible to define functional capacity. I know that the tables that were provided in March talk about capacity, and then we talk about functional capacity, and I just want to make sure we have a common understanding of what that means. And then I just had one more question of clarification.
So yes, we are looking at 2 different numbers when we look at capacity. In this chart, functional capacity is referring to the number of students that can work within the building, utilizing the space that's built for. So the capacity, the ministry capacity is often looking at the square footage of a building, but it's not identifying the spaces within that school that aren't necessarily wanting to be utilized for everyday classroom use. So a place like a library or a foods room may show that you can have 30 students in there, but it's not necessarily functionally built for a regular enrolling classroom. So we've gone through Associate Superintendent Arts, called all of the secondary principals and spoke with them about the capacity and then what they know of their building. So it's a bit more of a narrative as well as the space capacity conversation. So it's a little bit, what we would say is a little bit more true to what works best, the number of students that work best in a school.
Trustee Duncan.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that clarification, Superintendent. So just so that I'm clear, so I'm thinking of schools, for instance, that have maybe been over-enrolled or just are having space constraints they're dealing with, that might be looking to convert spaces that were maybe traditionally used for other things. Like maybe, I don't know, like a parent room or another kind of space, and then being converted into classrooms. Would those kinds of spaces that we've converted, that we would traditionally not have used for classrooms, but we've converted because schools are struggling with space, would those be considered part of the functional capacity of a school? Or would those not be, because we're considering kind of really what would be more appropriately used as a classroom space?
From our perspective, they would be counted. I think what wouldn't be counted is there's a room there that is smaller, significantly smaller than a classroom space. And so functionally, it couldn't be used as a classroom, even though it is showing on the building plan as square footage. It would be a place where we wouldn't necessarily want to have a class environment. But I think more specifically around functional capacity is we know some of the schools that do have space challenges are utilizing a library or half of a library as a classroom space, and that functionally isn't the preferred. So that would not be counted. A library wouldn't be counted as a learning space or a teaching space for that language.
Go ahead, Trustee Duncan.
Thanks. So just to follow up to kind of expand on the conversation. So where like say a parent room or maybe somewhere that might have been used to, I don't know, serve food or something for another purpose, those would be included, but not spaces like library, like common spaces that like libraries that are still being used for their core purpose as a library, but then sometimes utilized as a classroom space. Those wouldn't be counted.
That's correct. I think for the most part, when we do have challenges with space, we're utilizing every place in the building. And so if there was a classroom that went from a classroom to a parent room, and now we're looking or have already looked at bringing that back on board as a teaching classroom, that place would already be accounted in these numbers. So for the schools that are experiencing the challenges with capacity, they have looked at every opportunity within their building. And now we're looking at what beyond the building can we open up. So there are not as many spaces within a building that haven't been utilized, but we know as we bring learning studios on board that we're adding space to those buildings as well.
Go ahead, Trustee Duncan.
Yeah, sorry, just one more question of clarification. Thanks, Chair, appreciate it. So I just wanted to clarify. So I noticed that there's in catchment students listed in transfers. So I just wanted to clarify that because my understanding is that, you know, in catchment students would not need to transfer if they're in catchment, but I'm wondering like what context that would be, or if I'm just misunderstanding the way that the term is.
Yeah, no. Sorry, that's
That was
I'll
it.
interrupt you through the chair. So those would be students who are either have moved to a different school out of their catchment or currently attending a private school and are in catchment and are coming into the school. So it would be a request to come into the school because they're currently not, but they are an in catchment student. And I'll look to Sean Powell too if I've misrepresented that.
You have not misrepresented that at all. Makes absolute sense.
Awesome, thank you. Nissa, go ahead.
One of the things, and thank you so much for preparing this report. It's really informative. One of the things I noticed is that that Oak Bay High, which is a relatively new school, seems to consistently have a deficit in spaces, or like the number is red and negative. And I was wondering if you had any insights into why that is. Are we seeing changing demographics in the community? I just found it surprising, seeing as it's a new school, relatively speaking, having been built. I mean, that it's also a school I'm familiar with because my daughter attends.
May I answer that, Chair?
Absolutely, yeah, thank you, Superintendent.
I think there are two factors to consider in this, and thank you very much for the question. One is that class size requirements change since it was built. And the second, it is a geographically a large catchment area when you consider the distance to that school. So it does capture a lot of students, but I would say those are the two reasons why you see it typically at the other end of space capacity or space challenges.
Nissa, did you find that was helpful? Wonderful. All right. Do we have any closing questions from the committee for the superintendent? All righty, that does bring us to the end of our agenda. Would someone like to move for adjournment? I see Trustee Bayo's hand. All those in favor? That is unanimous. We are adjourned.